Hello, this is Diaz and a new author's story for my channel Russian Revenge Story. Enjoy listening, based on real events. Dina dreamed again that she was falling from a cable car. Behind her was a slanted cabin with a broken mount, and she was rapidly flying down, freezing with horror in anticipation of imminent death. Just before the ground, the dream, as usual, broke off, and the girl woke up in a sticky sweat with a lump of animal fear in the pit of her stomach. Will these dreams really haunt her all her life now? The first time she had a nightmare was 2 months ago, on the third day after her parents' funeral, when, it would seem, she had already survived the horror of the call from the Alpine camp, where they went to fulfill their long-standing dream of a vacation in the mountains together. Why did she grow up? While she was a minor, her parents kept postponing the cherished trip, considering themselves obliged to improve their child's health at the sea. And so, when Dina turned 18, they happily packed their bags and, like in their student days, went to a mountain resort. And the ill-fated funicular had to break just when they decided to admire the long-awaited beauty from above. Or maybe the wise Granny Sophia, who lived next door, was right, comforting Dina at the wake. "Don't cry, girl, don't cry. The Lord takes the soul at the moment when it is purest." So it was better for them this way, together, and with joy in their hearts. Here, a few dozen years, and there, eternity. Apparently, their time for eternity has come. You'd better pray for them. Tears are of little use, and your prayer will help them there. Dina prayed as best she could, but the sticky, nasty sleep would not go away, periodically repeating itself with monstrous accuracy. It was already getting light outside. Dina got up. Phew, I'd better start getting ready for college. Lying in bed won't do anything. It will only get worse. The old boards creaked under their feet. Oh, they won't get any repairs in the near future. Mom and Dad were going to start it upon returning from their trip. Now they'll have to use this money to survive, because they still have a lot of studying to do at college. Of course, they can arrange for free attendance and earn extra money, but will they have enough strength? Maybe it's better to go straight to correspondence, although correspondence is correspondence. You can't learn a specialty there the same way you can in a full-time program. Shaking off the last remnants of sleep, Dina went to make tea. She had to talk to the college director today. It was time to enter adulthood, since it had come so suddenly. The next few weeks were a continuous rush with registration for the correspondence department, issuing assignments and searching for a suitable job. And if at college everyone went to meet the girl in trouble and formalized everything without delays, then serious problems began with work. Either they did not want to take her without a specialty and work experience, or the employer immediately began to look at her unambiguously, or the work itself did not promise anything good for the young and inexperienced girl. Dina, frankly speaking, did not expect such difficulties. She believed that young people with their energy and susceptibility would always find a use for themselves, but reality turned out to be much harsher than expected. On one of those unfortunate days, having failed an interview for another vacancy of a secretary in the office, Dina wandered aimlessly along the street. She did not want to go home. The old house was sad, just like she was for the departed owners, and it was not in her power to replace them. Suddenly her attention was drawn to the window of a restaurant, in which a toy man in a turban was sitting cross-legged and shaking his white-bearded head, as if he had materialized from the tales of 1001 Nights. Being essentially still a child, the girl froze, examining the skillfully made doll, which made her distracted from sad thoughts. The little man nodded so wisely and confidently, hiding a slight smile in his snow-white mustache, as if he wanted to say, "Don't be sad, my dear. Everything in life passes. This too will pass." Having stood for some time and calmed down a little, Dina was about to go on, but her gaze, sliding along the steps of the porch, caught on a leather wallet, obviously dropped by one of the visitors. At first she hesitated, remembering the stories about swindlers robbing gullible passers-by with this simple trick, but then a sense of responsibility took over, and, wanting to help the hapless owner, the girl picked up the wallet and pushed the door of the restaurant. "Good afternoon. I found this on the porch. Maybe the rightful owner will miss it and come back for his loss," she addressed the guy behind the bar. "I didn't look. Maybe there's some kind of document there." The young man looked at the visitor in surprise, shook his head, and opened his wallet. There was a fair amount of money, a bank card, and several business cards. Having turned the bank card over in his hands and read the owner's name embossed on it, the bartender smiled. "You have the opportunity to give the fine to the owner yourself. This is our owner. His office is up the stairs, with a wooden panel door." The owner turned out to be an elderly, dark-haired man, with his temples generously sprinkled with the first grey hairs. Seeing his wallet, he was surprised and patted his pockets in bewilderment. "Well, what a miracle! I hadn't even noticed that it was missing, and it came back to me on its own, and in the arms of such a beauty. I must somehow thank you for your rare honesty. Tell me, do you have any needs?" His voice sounded so sympathetic that Dina, who had been desperately in need of parental support lately, unexpectedly burst into tears and told this first comer her sad story with a kind smile and the look of a man who had seen life. "Well, it must have been fate itself that brought you to me," thoughtfully rubbing his chin, the owner of the restaurant said. "Your parents died, my daughter left home. I'll give you a job, and I'll give you a decent salary. True, right now the restaurant only needs a dishwasher, but life doesn't stand still. Start small, then maybe another position will become available. I guarantee my protection. If someone offends you, come straight to me. You won't run in vain. I can see that. Agree." Not believing her unexpected luck, Dina wiped away her tears and instead of answering, just nodded her head happily. "That's good. My name is Timur Sergeyevich. As you already understood, I am the boss here. We have good people working here. I don't keep human rot. Of course, the visitors are different, but in general, they are also decent people. I think you'll like it here. Come tomorrow at 8. The work, however, is not the most prestigious, but it will do for a start." "What are you saying? I'm used to working in the kitchen. We often had guests at our house. It's nothing new for me to wash mountains of dishes." The girl smiled through drying tears. Dina walked along the evening embankment, and the warm wind gently stirred her loose hair. She had been working for Timur Sergeyevich for over a year now. He hadn't deceived her. His people really turned out to be wonderful, friendly, reliable, sympathetic. Dina tried her best, and they responded with a friendly attitude and support. Now she's finished college, but she doesn't want to leave the restaurant. Moreover, Timur Sergeyevich raised the salary. It's time to think about renovating the old house. The smooth flow of peaceful thoughts was interrupted by a strange sound. It came from somewhere on the left, and in the gathering twilight, it was not entirely clear who was making this muffled squeak. Looking more closely, Dina realized that the squeak was coming from a tightly swaddled bundle in the arms of a young woman standing 2 meters away from Dina and peering intently into the dark surface of the water swaying under the bridge. The woman's pose betrayed such tension and despair that Dina was frightened, sensing something bad, but she did not move, afraid to provoke the stranger. However, the woman noticed her and, turning away from the surface of the water, looked at Dina. Her eyes were empty, as the eyes of a person who has already crossed the line of extreme suffering, breaking through with tears and screams, and entering a period of despair and refusal to continue the struggle are empty. "No!" Dina wanted to shout. "No! Don't you dare! You can never give up!" But she did not have time. The baby in the woman's arms changed its weak squeak to a desperate roar, as if sensing the danger of the situation. The young mother shuddered, stepped back from the bridge railing, and Dina finally grabbed her by the shoulders. "What are you doing? How can you? You're young and you have a child." The words poured out incoherently. Dina had no idea what to say to a person in such cases. I don't know. I don't know what to do. The milk is gone. There's nothing to feed. There's no housing or money. Nothing." "Why all this?" The young woman burst into tears, and Dina felt a little relieved. If she cries, it means she's coming out of her stupor. She needs to continue. But how to continue? The right decision came instantly. In Dina's purse was an envelope with her salary and bonuses, given out today by Timur Sergeyevich. To tell the truth, Dina wasn't supposed to get a bonus, but in response to his ward's puzzled look, Timur Sergeyevich frowned slightly, hiding his smile, and said curtly, "Take it. It's on the occasion of finishing her studies. Would I congratulate my daughter? Yes, I would, and your father would congratulate you. So don't hesitate and surprise yourself." But today, someone else clearly needed a surprise, and Dina, decisively grabbing the woman by the hand, said in a tone that did not tolerate objections, "We're going to the supermarket now. We'll buy food for you and the baby there, and don't you dare refuse." The woman had no intention of making excuses. She just stood there, looking at Dina with distrust and wrapping the baby in the edges of her old sweater. Finally, drawn by the girl, the young mother moved from her place, and they went to the nearest store to do some shopping. The child, as if anticipating the imminent feeding, became quiet and only grunted, reminding of his impatience. The bonus was just enough for everything: formula, a bottle, a pacifier, fruit and vegetable purees, diapers and food for the exhausted mother. But the formula had to be prepared, and changing the baby in the cool evening wind was imprudent. So having decided that if you were doing a good deed, you had to do it to the end, Dina led the young mother, who couldn't believe her luck, home. While preparing dinner and feeding 6-month-old Sanka, the girls got to talking. The stranger introduced herself as Ksenia and told her simple, old as the world, but stubbornly not losing its relevance, story about a beautiful love into which an unexpected pregnancy wedged itself. Immediately, grounding, high impulses, and flowery confessions. The result of this story was that the child's father, who had paid for the rented apartment for a year in advance, disappeared without a trace, leaving no contact information or even a new phone number. And 3 months after his escape, Sanka, who had just been born, filled the world with his screams. A week ago, the lease expired and the room had to be vacated. In his native village, the parental home had long been occupied by his older brother, with whom the relationship was hopelessly ruined. Wandering around the city did not bring any results, and if the miracle in the form of Dina had suddenly appeared with her help, it is still unknown whether this whole story would have had a happy ending. And how does this scoundrel live with this now? It is pure betrayal to abandon a woman who is carrying your child under her heart. Doesn't he have nightmares at night? Dina was indignant in her direct youthful maximalism. He always had a good sleep, Ksenia answered sadly, gently rocking Sanka, who was blissfully falling asleep after a hearty feeding. Dina did not sleep half the night, trying to find a way out of the current situation. Nothing sensible could be thought of. The risk of an orphanage for chubby Sanka, given the homeless state of his mother, was great and obvious. Therefore, in the morning, hurrying to work, she left Ksenia with spare keys and told her to settle in with her for now. On the way, Dina's thoughts switched to Timur Sergeyevich. He must miss his daughter, since he takes such good care of her, Dina. The girl did not know the details of this sad story. They only said that Timur Sergeyevich did not like his daughter's fiancé, and she went and ran away from her parents' house with her beloved God knows where, turning off her phone and leaving no address. According to rumors, Timur was furious at the time, and for a long time did not even try to look for his daughter, who, in his opinion, had disgraced the family's honor. However, the years passed. There was no news from the prodigal daughter, and the father, overcoming his pride, nevertheless took up the search, but they yielded nothing. The trail was lost, and Timur Sergeyevich was left in melancholy and sadness over his missing daughter. Who knows, maybe she too, like Ksenia, without a home, without relatives, suffers in other people's houses. A wild thought flashed through Dina's head. The working day flew by quickly, and in the evening the girl again hurried to the supermarket to please her. Unexpectedly appeared guests with goodies. Having sorted out the full bags, Ksenia only threw up her hands and began to deftly set the table. Sitting down to dinner, she rubbed her palms together and said, "Hungry Fedor will eat any kind of cabbage soup," and began to empty the contents of her plate with gusto. "What kind of strange saying is this?" Dina asked with her mouth full, infected with Ksenia's wolfish appetite. "It's not mine, it's my late friend's saying," Ksenia answered. "I repeated it every time I sat down at the table, so I got used to it. Now I say it in memory of her." Dina had another sleepless night, but this time her insomnia was devoted to arithmetic. 2 trips to the store in a row made it very clear to her that she could not feed all 3 of them on her salary. All the options for budget menus came up against the strict requirements for the diet of 6-month-old Sanka. No matter how you look at it, homemade cottage cheese, an egg, and a piece of dietary meat must be provided to the growing body. He is not to blame for the intricacies of adult, often careless relationships, and therefore should definitely not suffer. I'll have to ask Timur Sergeyevich for leftovers from the banquets. Dina found the only possible way out. Leftovers were a real Klondike for many restaurant workers. Cooked dishes were often not eaten, remaining untouched on the tables. According to the rules of the restaurant, which Timur Sergeyevich strictly observed, they had to be written off along with the uneaten food on the plates. But no one would dare throw away quality and tasty food, and the service personnel were allowed to take it with them. Until now, Dina was embarrassed to resort to this method of survival, rightly believing that she was paid well and could feed herself. But now the situation has changed radically, and she will have to sacrifice her principles. A large banquet was planned in a week. Dina hesitated for a long time to ask Timur Sergeyevich, but at the very last moment, when there was nowhere to put it off, she finally said, "Timur Sergeyevich, I usually never asked, but now certain circumstances have arisen. In general, can I also take the leftovers from the banquet today? I really need it." The director slightly raised his left eyebrow. "Take it. It will go to waste anyway. Have you got yourself a pet?" Dina was confused. "No, I don't have time for pets yet. I need to help people. You understand, hungry Fedor will eat any cabbage soup." For some reason, Timur Sergeyevich turned very pale, swayed, and, trying in vain to hide his excitement, asked, "Wait, where did you hear this saying?" "I recently got a lodger. She always repeats it before meals. Actually, I bring her food. She has a baby, and she has no housing or work. It so happened that they have nowhere else to go. And, you understand, I can't feed them on my salary." You can always take food for her. The Almighty blesses alms to the poor, the director said thoughtfully and hurried to disappear behind the door of his office. Left alone, Timur Sergeyevich jerked a bottle of mineral water out of the refrigerator and emptied it almost in one gulp. Swallowing the prickly, slightly salty water greedily, he feverishly tried to figure out where the unknown Dina's lodger could have come up with the saying of his best army friend, Alexander Arkhipov, who had instantly burned up in the flames of a crashed helicopter. In memory of his friend, he brought this saying from the Afghan war and used it only in a narrow family circle before sitting down at the table. His wife Nina had died long ago, and the saying had become only his and Karina's. Remembering his daughter, Timur Sergeyevich gritted his teeth and splashed the rest of the mineral water in his face. Has Karinochka really come back? An obsessive thought drilled into his brain. Or is it just a coincidence? Or maybe it's just a woman who knew my daughter. For the first time in so many years, a thin thread. We can't miss it. We can't miss it under any circumstances. Timur Sergeyevich paced nervously around the office. He was overwhelmed by conflicting feelings, timid joy at the hope that had appeared, cold fear that the hope might be in vain, burning impatience to go right now and find out everything. What if it wasn't Karina? And if it was, how would she greet him? And what would he even say to her? One thing was clear. The situation had to be clarified urgently. He simply couldn't stand it until tomorrow. He couldn't go there without Dina. He could accidentally scare her off and ruin everything. So he had to wait until the end of the banquet. It seemed that time had never dragged on so slowly. The restless, cheerful guests did not want to leave. They no longer needed a toastmaster or karaoke. They were quite successfully entertaining themselves. At another time, Timur Sergeyevich would have been happy with the successful banquet. But now, right now, it was sheer torture. Finally, by midnight, the people began to slowly disperse. Another hour, and the tired staff would also begin to wander home. Desperately afraid of missing Dina, Timur Sergeyevich went downstairs, got into the car, and began to wait, not losing sight of the restaurant exit for a second. The old pain that had burst from the depths of his memory tormented him with renewed vigor. Why had he been so harsh then? Yes, of course, his daughter had chosen a worthless groom for herself. Such impudent and self-confident spendthrifts are not suitable for a family in principle. But it was possible not to cut off the shoulder, to come up with some kind of workaround. If Nina were alive, all these workarounds were always her thing. With their help, she managed to pacify even her straightforward, categorical, and hot-tempered husband. Now he is broken down, calmed down, but then it was not easy for her with him. But never anger, nor screaming, nor a harsh word. If only Karina were like her. But she was like her father, the same unbending and abrupt. So she chopped it off, and he is also good. Lost in his memories, Timur Sergeyevich missed Dina's exit. He came to his senses when her fragile figure was already beginning to disappear in the thickening darkness. Trying not to make any sudden movements, the worried father moved from the spot and slowly drove after them. Dina's house turned out to be very close. Having waited for her to enter the house with bags full of banquet delicacies, Timur Sergeyevich, after hesitating for a couple of seconds, gathered his courage and, getting out of the car, followed her. The gate, which in principle did not know what a latch was, swung open easily, and he stepped into the yard. But what is this? Dina is sitting on the porch of the house, with abandoned bags on either side, and her shaking shoulders leave no doubt that the girl is crying. Dina, what's wrong with you? Are you okay? Why are you crying here, on the porch? Timur Sergeyevich's voice, hoarse with excitement, betrayed his confusion, but the girl had no time for that now. They've disappeared, both mother and child, and they were getting ready in a hurry. The children's things are scattered on the floor, the keys are left on the table. I can't even imagine what could have happened. Maybe someone scared them, or they were interested in the child. You and I won't solve anything on the porch. Timur Sergeyevich pulled himself together. Let's go into the house, see what's what. Maybe we'll figure something out. But nothing became clear in the house. Several rompers thrown away in a hurry, an open pack of diapers, an untouched bottle of formula. The man bent down to pick up the fallen things and suddenly noticed a white rectangle of a fallen photograph lying face down on the floor. A sharp pain pierced his heart. A treacherous weakness appeared in his legs. From the dropped photo, Timur Sergeyevich himself was looking at him, young and dapper, hugging young Nina and the young spring wind, trying with all its might to carry away her snow-white lace veil. This was the best photo from their wedding, and it disappeared from the bookshelf on the very day of Karina's escape. There was no doubt. It was her, after so many years. But where to look for her now? What fatal circumstances! She had just been found, and then disappeared again. The disobedient, trembling fingers feverishly scrolled through the list of contacts. Maybe she was at someone's place, afraid to go home with a child. Silly girl. He would take her in with 10 children, as long as they were together. But who could she go to? During this time, the ranks of family friends had thinned out. Some had left, some had gone to where Nina is now. The frantic search was interrupted by a businesslike female voice. A neighbor had dropped in for a light. Dinochka, I'm sorry to bother you at this hour of the night. Oh, don't worry so much. Why are you crying right away, as if the end of the world was tomorrow? Well, the little one had a fever. He was vomiting. But the ambulance didn't find anything dangerous. Yes, they took her to the central hospital just in case. A child won't tell you what else might hurt, and I called the ambulance myself. Your resident doesn't have her own phone number. She came running to me. And what about me? I'm always happy to help. Without listening to the neighbor's further lengthy reasoning, Timur Sergeyevich rushed headlong to the car. Dina, knocking over the bags left on the porch and adjusting her slipper as she went, rushed after him. The car sped along the night highway. Fortunately, at this time it was already deserted. Feverish excitement did not leave Timur Sergeyevich. Really? The long-awaited meeting seemed unreal to him. He had waited too long. He was too tired to hope. The nurse in the emergency room gave in almost without a fight. It was really impossible to resist the powerful onslaught of the father, who was almost at his destination. Having received the coveted floor and room number, Timur Sergeyevich rushed up the stairs with the speed of a young man jumping over every other step. Dina, out of breath, tried to keep up, but she did it with difficulty. Here is the necessary glass door. The door handle miraculously did not remain in the strong father's hands. On the bed, facing the window, lies a woman. The child, with her arms spread out, snores nearby in a crib. Karina, my daughter, a voice full of hope and pain cut through the hospital silence. The woman turned around and raised herself on her elbow, trying to see who had entered. Timur Sergeyevich's throat tightened, and his treacherously buckling legs forced him to grab a chair standing nearby. You are not Karina, he gasped for the suddenly thickened air. And where is Karina? Where is Karinochka, my daughter? Yes, I am not Karina, Ksenia answered in a dispassionate voice. Karina was my best friend. Was? Why was? Timur Sergeyevich's voice betrayed his extreme tension. And you must be Timur Sergeyevich, Karina's father? Then sit down. It's a long story. You can't have such conversations on your feet. We met 5 years ago, soon after Karina ran away from home with Edik and went to the ends of the earth. Edik had a room in a communal apartment in our city. I lived with them in the same corridor. We shared the stove and the refrigerator in half. The tables in the kitchen were next to each other. Karina and I somehow got along right away. She was cheerful, life, loving, daring. I had always lacked these qualities in life, but next to her they came from nowhere, as if she woke them up from hibernation. We could talk for hours. She understood me at a glance, and I understood her too. When she quarreled with Edik, she would come to me to dispel my sadness and melancholy. This guy was good at a party and in company, but he was no good for family life. He would earn some money, go for a walk with his friends. The money would come and go. He didn't know how to count it. Karinka would get angry, start to reproach her, and he would fall on his knees in front of her and start showering her with compliments. Of course, she would instantly cool down, unable to resist the charms of a heartbreaker, but the aftertaste remained. Once the aftertaste had accumulated, they began to quarrel fiercely. Karinka had a character. She wouldn't give in so easily. And he would yell and slam the door and go back to his friends. And Karina would come to me. She deeply regretted running away from home, but her pride wouldn't let her come back and confess. She would only tell me about you and your late mother, what a strong family you had and how you lived together. How could she, after such an upbringing, put up with Edik's antics? But something kept them together for a long time, despite their chaotic life. And then Edik had something in mind, to earn as much as he couldn't spend. He told Karina that he was going to go and earn money, packed his suitcase, and was gone. But I didn't believe his stories. He often talked to some woman on the phone, and from the scraps of conversation it seemed to me that this woman was not poor. Most likely, he slipped away to her. She had money, and Edik always knew how to use it to arrange days that were different from each other. This is probably the only thing he always knew how to do professionally. Karina realized that she was going to have a child only after he left. But how could she tell him? He didn't leave an address, and there was nowhere to call. The subscriber is out of reach. Her friend understood that he had abandoned her, but she didn't leave, hoping that he would return. But he never returned, and he still doesn't know that he had a son. By the way, Karina named her son after one of your friends. She said that you fought together and were very close. After Sanka was born, she finally got ready to go home, but she kept waiting for him to be at least 3 months old. The road was long, but she was not destined to return. There was a fire in our communal apartment. The wiring should have been changed a long time ago, but as always, they put it off until the last minute. So they waited until the fire broke out. I was at work then. I came back, and smoke was pouring out of our windows, and fire trucks were arriving with a howl. I ran upstairs to see what was there, but I couldn't even go into the room. Everything burned down. Karina and another neighbor of ours, an elderly man living alone, died in the fire. Severe burns and carbon monoxide poisoning, but little Sasha was saved. Karina, apparently, noticed the fire, rolled the stroller with him out onto the common balcony, threw some things in it. She herself, apparently, came back for something else and never came out again. Firefighters took Sanka off the balcony and found Karina on the threshold of her room, already dead. So the only ones left of the apartment were me and Sanka, without a stake or a yard. I found your photo in the things that were in the stroller. Karina also saved it as the most precious thing. Then they settled me in temporary housing, and Sanka was taken to the hospital for examination. The guardianship authorities categorically refused to give him to me. No husband, no housing, only coals, and those had already been cleaned up. I started looking for your address, but it turned out to be a long process, and he was doing badly in the orphanage. He lost weight, turned blue, cried all the time. One day I took him for a walk, hugged him, and he screamed. I lifted his blouse, and there was a bruise from a hand. Apparently he was bothering someone with his crying. He clings to me with his little hands as soon as I approach the baby house, screaming at the top of his lungs. I realize that they beat him, and now he is afraid to go back there. And I had no peace of mind at all after the fire. And I was so angry that I didn't think about anything then, that I was breaking the law, that I had 3 kopecks in my pocket. I ran to the highway, got into the truck driver's cabin, and hitchhiked to your city. But I didn't know how to find you. The police probably already have everything on me. Officially, I can't go anywhere. The anger subsided. My faith in my strength was shaken, and I wandered around the streets, hungry and helpless, beside myself with despair. The house burned down. The child was stolen. Not a kopeck of money. Then on the bridge where Dina met me, I was completely crushed, but the Lord saved me from mortal sin. So I ended up in Dina's house, afraid to even tell her the truth about myself. And then you know everything. A heavy, deep silence fell. Timur Sergeyevich sat on a chair, clutching his head tightly in his hands and rocking from side to side. It would be better if he screamed and cried, thought Dina, shaking with nervous tension. She herself had long since soaked her entire handkerchief with tears and was trying with all her might not to chatter her teeth so as not to aggravate the situation. Ksenia was devastatedly silent. It was hard to say how long they would have sat like this, but the prolonged pause was interrupted by the hungry Sanka, loudly announcing his empty stomach with his cries. Ksenia turned to the child, and Timur Sergeyevich finally straightened up. Dina gasped. It seemed to her that in these few minutes he had aged 10 years. Deep, sorrowful wrinkles had formed on his face, hiding stingy streams of tears from those around him. But he was still a very strong man. After waiting for Sanka to calm down, sucking on his favorite bottle, he firmly put the chair back in place and said, "Ksenia, don't be afraid of anything. You gave me my grandson back. Now my home is your home. You will live in it as long as you want. I will settle the troubles with the law. My connections are enough for that. From the hospital straight to me, I will pick up your things from Dina myself." Ksenia did not have time to answer. Afraid to give vent to his feelings, Timur Sergeyevich abruptly threw to Dina, "I'm waiting in the car," and quickly left the ward. Dina, waving goodbye to Ksenia, hurried after him. There were 4 people standing at the low grave fence, a short grey-haired man, a girl, and a young woman with a child in her arms. A dark-eyed, laughing girl with an unruly curl above her high forehead looked at them from the shiny black surface of the installed monument. "Well, at least we met like this, my daughter," Timur Sergeyevich said, putting an armful of burgundy roses on the grave. "Forgive your stupid and proud father. You hear me, I know." "She forgave you a long time ago, Timur Sergeyevich." Ksenia touched the man's elbow. "Karina never said a bad word about you, only good ones." "That's good," he responded. "People need to be forgiven, and the sooner the better. It's a pity I understood this truism too late." "Dina," Timur Sergeyevich addressed the girl, "Ksenia and I will stay here for a couple more days, and you go home. A restaurant cannot live without the owner's eye." "Without you?" Dina asked fearfully. "What are you afraid of? You're an administrator now. Get used to it. I need to pay attention to my grandson. I won't be able to spend as much time in the restaurant as before." With these words, Timur Sergeyevich picked up Sanka, who immediately clung to him, and they slowly wandered towards the exit from the cemetery into a new strip of such a difficult and sometimes completely unpredictable life. If you liked the story, please support me with a like. And to learn about the release of new, interesting stories, subscribe to my channel. All the best to you. Thank you for watching.